want to start tonight with a confession. I have had or do have a prompting issue. And the prompting issue is not exactly what you think. It's going to be the sprawl of prompts. I looked in the folder where I'm keeping track of my prompts a couple of weeks ago and found that I had 340 files sitting in the prompt folder. And if you're anything like me, that you've got that prompt being stored there as used for proposals V4. This is the good one, or the infamous final version of it. If this sounds familiar, then you definitely want to follow along. We're going to talk about how to organize your prompts and how to be better organized with not just using the chat agents. We're going to talk now about going from a chat interface to an agent interface, and why prompt engineering is back on the table and is something that we need to talk about, and why you need to get everything organized. So that's what is tonight's topic, is going to be coming together, and we're going to talk about going from prompt chaos to being a prompt commander, as well as not just for yourself, but for your whole organization. So if any of this sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. Even us as tech people have found ourselves in this situation, where I was looking at it from a standpoint of us internally here at WT Solutions. I know that I've got a lot of prompts, so does our engineering team, so does our project managers, but our marketing team. What you find there is that you've got a bunch of people that are creating this same scenario over and over again, but not being able to work from the good playbook. So what I see happening is that Sue is going to create a whole bunch of prompts that fit what she needs, and then Sally, who works with Sue, doesn't have access to those, so she's also recreating it. But then Sue, which may just be an alter ego of what I'm doing, then is also going, what was that? So the average person is rewriting per month 4 to 7 times, sometimes the same prompt. So you've created a beautiful, well thought out one that is used for helping you write a LinkedIn post, for helping you do this. And yeah, you might get some reuse out of that, but then there's probably hundreds others. And the other thing that we keep finding by looking and talking with clients is that executives are jumping between the different AI agents they have to go back to those sessions. So it's a lot of work time. And a client that I have a meeting with in the coming weekend is having that exact problem and needs some help on organization, because they're bouncing between Perplexity and Gemini and ChatGPT and the various agents, and they're going into the history and having to spend a lot of time searching to find what they did in this prompt and the session from when they were last working on. So I'm going to outline in this webinar tonight the solution and how we're looking at this. Yes, it's going to involve some code. It's going to involve a lot of organization, but we're going to dive deep here into actually how to fix this, so that we're not all suffering from the hidden cost of the prompt chaos. We're going to take the average worker and take so they're not rewriting it 4 to 7 times. We're going to make it more efficient for teams. We're also going to get better consistency so that the team is able to have consistent output. When they have the prompt for use of, let's say, creating Facebook ads, you're going to have redundancy because the rest of the team can now execute it off of the same level of quality, and everybody's working from the same playbook. But by the end of this session, you won't need to have that just flat folder of prompt library anymore. We're going to talk about how to take and put these into an agentic format, because that's really the next evolution. Organizing it to get a little bit of quick wins is very good right now, but what we want to do is work towards that end goal of full agentic. So I'm going to walk you through the various steps of this. I'm Eric Garrison. I've been building and deploying AI agents for enterprise teams over the past couple of years. I know it sounds crazy. We were using AI 2 years before ChatGPT was called that. I have worked with Fortune 500 operations down to small businesses, have had great impact with all of them. So if it's your first time watching a video, I hope you can subscribe to this series. We have a lot of great stuff here. But let's go ahead and dive into the chaos. And I'm going to first explain here with a quick diagram what is the difference between a chat interface and an AI interface, just so we're working on the same team and can look at this very holistically here so that we're all speaking the same language. So chat versus agent. This is where when you're doing a chat versus agent, you ask a question, the AI replies, and then you do the work. Most of the time you're asking the question, you are asking it with a prompt because you're trying to tell it what you want to do. So this is very much a question and answer. This is how ChatGPT started out. From an agent standpoint, you are then asking the agent to do something. Most cases, this is going to be an off-the-shelf agent. This could be your own agent. It doesn't matter. It's going to need the structured input either way. So here we're going from you asking the agent. I ask my agents how to do things or to go do things for me for my Slack channels. It can be done with many other ones, but this is how you interface with like the open clause and stuff. So that's the agent then replies and handles it, and then the work is done. So it's not as much of handing it back to the user. This is going to be where we're going to have the orchestration to then go and do things. But part of this agentic setup is also having the right structure to tell the agent how we want to do this. We don't want to put in the control of the agent of how to execute these commands. We want to tell it the structure of, hey, you're a marketing agent. We want you to create these Facebook. This is the demographic. We're going after this total addressable market. We're looking to have positive ROI from these. And then, it's going to be handled differently when you're creating a Facebook ad than if you're handling cost per click. So you've got to have that context to the different agents. So, that's definitely a big piece of it. But it sounds like, oh, I'm going to have to create all these prompts. Well, that is part of the diagnosis that you need to do, is organizing these prompts in the diagnosis. So right now for a marketing agent, and I'm going to show you here on the screen. If you look here, these are some of the marketing prompts that we have in the works. And these, there's about 100 of them here already. So these marketing agent prompts are ones that we have developed to be able to organize what needs to happen. And it's not just because we're doing this for that chat interface. We're doing this for the purpose of having the AI automation and having the bots behind it. So how many, let's look at, this problem and everything. I do want to ask you a question. So in the chat right now, I want to pop up a quick question to everybody, and thanks for everybody who's watching this. If you're watching this later on YouTube, you can go ahead and put it into the comments. How many prompts do you think you have saved across all locations? And if you're using ChatGPT's history as your prompt repository, so count those as well. Do you have fewer than 25? Do you have 25 to 100, 100 to 300? That's where, I'm putting myself at about 340, 300 plus. Let me know what the results are and how many you think you have hanging out there that are fitting this. I'd like to get a little bit of feedback. So, all right. Let's build something. The first step of getting out of this chaos is we're going to accept that there's a lot of moving parts and everything, but we're going to say that not all prompts are created equal, and they shouldn't be stored the same way. I want to introduce a 3-tier architecture here into what I'm going to call the prompt stack. So we're used to calling about the OSI model or the tech stack. Here's going to be the prompt stack. So it maps directly into how your agents are built, and it also works as both an organizational system and a deployment blueprint. So here is my 3-tier prompt stack, and you feel free to take a screen capture of this if you want. We'll put some notes into it down in the body here, but this is my work product. You can have it here. So every prompt that you have should belong in one of these three tiers. So tier one is going to be your context. This is what we talked about a little bit in the last episode. This is the who are you type of stuff. So this is what typically goes into an agent MD. Then the second tier is going to be the skills prompt. So this is that refining of the process. It's going to be your SOPs. And a lot of times I'm calling it skills. You may or may not formulate this as a skill. It is one of those things that a lot of the AI agents today, you can save these type of things out as a skill and share amongst your people, but we're going to not share it out amongst people. We're building agentic workflows here. So our skills prompts are actually going to go and be some of the bedrock foundation of our AI agents. And then we have task specific. So these are the things that you've done that are one-time requests with variable content, and these are going to be more of the chat session where you're possibly taking what you did with a skills prompt and putting it here. So if we look at it from the model, the things that are up at level 1 are really change a little less. Number 2 changes less than or changes a little more than number 1, and then number 3 is where all the variability is. The thing that is a very important rule that I want you to write down is if you type substantially at the same prompt more than twice, it's probably a task prompt. If it's a prompt that you have typed 4 to 7 times, that's more of a skills prompt. If it is something that if you don't remember to put into your prompts to tell it, I'm the CTO of a technology company, that is your level 1. That's your context prompt. So that's the way that we're going to think about these. And when you start to put these all together, this is how we're going to organize it. So let's take a look. This is kind of how we're going to create folders and structures. Now, I will tell you here as a pro tip, if you have Claude Workflow, take some of the notes of what I'm saying here in this video, prop that into Workflow and maybe the screen capture that you took of my 3 levels, and ask Claude Workflow to create your 3 folders and to, Claude Cowork to create those folders. You want to create a folder called Prompt Organization, give it rights to it, and then have it organize your 340 prompts, in my case, into those folders. That is something it is totally capable of doing. So give that a shot. That is definitely, we're deeper in this series. I'm giving you guys a little bit of homework and harder stuff to do here. So let's first come up with this practical folder structure. So let me show you exactly how this looks on disk on mine. So I want this to work directly with my Claude Code, my Codex, co-working, any agents I'm hoping to harness here. So here is where I am coming and creating. You're going to see a lot of extra complex here, like meeting prep and follow-up email MD. I use the MD files for all of my prompts. It is very, very flexible. And here is an example of some of the things that come together with this. So as you're seeing, I have a lot of organization for things like the referral template or the draft email, or I was looking at some stuff around some cold emails recently for one of our prospect clients. So that's where this cold email MD came from. And here it is, being organized. Every single file you see in this structure started off as a prompt, prompt that I typed into the chat box. So what we're hoping to do here is, instead of letting it die in the chat box and me going back up into the history, we're trying to give it the structure that we can create this once. I'm actually storing it here in Microsoft SQL table. So let me just show you what those 100 prompts end up looking like. So here I'm going to walk you through just a quick high-level view of what they look like inside of the SQL server. I want to spend just 2 minutes now talking about the naming convention, because this is where most of organization and prompt libraries are going to either fall on their face or be highly organized. Vague names are your enemy. Your future self your teammates, and frankly, your AI agents are going to benefit from names that describe what the prompt actually does. More so than having final at the end is going to be what the agent is designed. So, what we're looking at here is what people typically write is going to be like good email MD. But what is going to be more helpful is post email proposal email.md or the LinkedIn MD V5. Instead of having that, is going to be LinkedIn thought leadership post and LinkedIn funny post or LinkedIn Friday post. Those are going to be much more compelling than having like V3, V4, V5. The other one is going to be writing.md and having things such as your brand voice guide in a MD format versus having it just show up as writing.md. So that's something to think about, and feel free to use any of these and add your own spin to them. It depends on your business, but what we're hoping to do here is migrate that prompt graveyard where some of those prompts have been sitting out there for a couple of weeks and have not been used and but do need to be used again into the skills library. And that's the whole reason why I took, a second ago showing the SQL Server, that's the whole reason why I took my 300 prompts. So if you've got 300 prompts scattered across 6 places, you're going to want to, not necessarily get that fixed in one sitting. It's going to take some of the thought. But as you start organizing what you think your skills are going to need to do, base it off of the skills that you have done. So it's easy to take and say, if it is at LinkedIn V5, you have written that 4 other times beforehand, and you probably have used it multiple times. That's a good thing to have as a skill, and to then think about the best way to lock that in and to put that in. So I would say as a recommendation, instead of sitting down and heads down on it for 2 hours, spend 15 minutes a week over the next couple of weeks. I created the 100 that are in our SQL Server database using partly AI to organize them and to enhance them, as well as to add to them. But you also want to think about how to enhance them in such a way that your team is going to benefit. Because what I found in a lot of mine when putting them in here, they were things that myself or other people worked on, and they were very much about and how we're doing this, not the entire company and not the team. So that's a good thing to think about. When you are doing this for a team, let's talk about the Prompt Audit Sprint. So this is something that I'm going to give you here a couple of steps that I think will help out, and rough timelines. But the first thing to do and how we approach this is dump them all into one location. So export what you can from the various chat interfaces. Make sure that you're getting your TextPad, your Notepad, your MD files, your Notion, your Google Docs, your Slack saves, browser bookmarks, all of these type things into organized folders like we were talking about, but then make sure that you are getting rid of previous versions. So in that case, we're at final, we want only that version and not final. If that makes sense. We want to make sure that we are not competing and giving our organization extra copies. So for a given task, we want to make sure that it is the final. We can put that into an archive folder if we want to make sure that we've got something unique that was in version final only or V2. When we're on V5, put them in archive so they're not lost, but they're not going to go into our master record. So the next step is going to be the triaging of them. And what I'm going to look in the triaging is also take in my prompts and what my team is also using. So I want to bring those together from different dumps And we've done this as an enterprise exercise for a larger company that we were having to do a lot of their engineering files across different verticals. So some of the products they make are ones that go through multiple steps, and they've got specs because something is created and it's overlaid, then other things are put and packaged and bundled. That's very common, but each department had their piece to it. So the part that prints on top of the other substrates and everything, their documents were totally separate. We had to bring those together, and some of that's human, some of that is done with the LLM. But you're going to do that same type of triage and bring together and have a group of your archive, your ones that are in the right context, your skills and your tasks from our model above. Then we're going to think about the next step, which is going to be the build. So this is where we're going to take those tag prompts that are part of the skills, and what we're going to do is make sure, the goal is not perfection, it's deployment, because we want to test. A working skill is going to be a draft skill. And what that means is it's better to get it in there when it's 90% done than have it not in there and keep just manually doing it. So let's move forward, and I'm going to show you here a quick skills template that I would say most people can look at here. But your skills files need to be transformed into whatever you had them in prompt format into this type of format. So here's a good example. And remember, one thing you'll notice is I don't have any carriage returns in here. I've compressed this. I'm thinking about the context window. So this is the post-meeting follow-up email. So this is a skill that I want to be able to execute by going into Slack and have it create. And in this case, what I would do with this is have it email me the draft. So it's going to be my skill is going to be my post-meeting email. We had a discovery call. We're doing a draft proposal. So you can read a lot of this. But what I am going to do here is I did call a couple MCPs. I was just really testing here. We typically do using without MCP to have the calls, but you might want to plug in additional agents here if you're running this off of some of the more modern ones like Claude or ChatGPT. You can call out and use other things to make a prettier PDF, as well as be able to call an email. So that's where you're going to have those references that we're going to call these other model context protocols, it's MCP. Think of these as APIs that are able to be called to be able to do a function for us. A skill is something that's got the capabilities. An MPC is something that is already bundled up and is meant to be very easy. So MCP is in a lot of cases replacing what back in the early part of this series we talked about N8N and Make.com and Zapier. Those type of systems are now being replaced a lot of times by MCP. So we've been talking about the difference here between a prompt and a skill. I'm going to take a second here and show you a little bit of the difference between the a role specific agent and something we're doing here with the skill into it. So here is a good example of where we're going to have this execute from a prompt to a skill to an agent. And you're going to take what you already have sitting in your notes file and now make it repeatable action. So I just wanted to give you a quick example of why we're doing this and how it becomes a repeatable option here. So as you see here, it's able to do these type of functions, and really this is about 1 minute worth of interaction here to be able to do this. It doesn't really take all that much time to make this happen, but I just wanted to walk it through here and show you a good example of this. So but I wanted to let's zoom out and look at what we're actually building, what we've been talking about with the individual prompts and skills. The end game here is a complete AI, operating system, one where each deployment of your or each department of your business has its own agents and is trained on your processes, connected to the various tools and the things it needs to do, so that every week you're getting that lift from doing it. So and I'll give you a couple quick examples here of ones that for our organization and for a lot of the other organizations that we see people using these for. So let's look at the AI workforce. These are a lot of times today, it's going to be an executive assistant. So this is going to be helping the C-suite with daily briefs. So that's where it goes through your email and sends you a daily brief or writes out a daily brief to an HTML file on your machine. For meeting prep, for drafting emails, and for correspondence with referrals. So this is something that we want to have go off at a specific time. We call it cron. So this is when you have a who, what, where, when type of scenario of an agent firing off. So in my mind, that's a 7 a.m. type of fire off. Then let's look at things that are going to be for on the marketing side for your head of content. So this is something that is looking to help with a viral hook, with a LinkedIn post, with newsletter draft, with ad copy. So that is taking systems together like Notion and possibly X and Perplexity that have access to the internet, content from LinkedIn or Buffer, which is what we use to schedule posts. This is weekly, this is kind of ties to your weekly content calendar. It's actually what I help pull together my thoughts to do this webinar. So every month I do this webinar. What I do is I start off with my frame template. It comes up with a lot of the hook that I do. I give it the input. It is not it writing all the script, but it's us co-authoring the script. But a lot of times throughout the month, I have these ideas that are going into a Notepad or Notion file that then I feed in when it's time to create this script. That's very important. So another type of agent I can see that we utilize as well. It's built into our HyperFlex application today, and we're refining that more. We're not using off the shelf for that. We actually took RAG type of operation on steroids and took our cold emailing and our knowledge emailing and fed all of that data into our own vectorized database to be able to generate emails that sound like the emails we've generated over the last 7 years, but we're creating them new using newer technology and cutting down the time that it takes to do that. Of course, we write about emerging AI technologies. We can't go into ChatGPT and ask it to write us those type of articles. If you're writing about something in the construction industry, you guys luck out because you can feed it in that knowledge and keep doing that. Which is where like a content research agent for us, our research agent is things that we do to find our clients' competitors and to do analysis on them, to look at their websites, even down to an operations agent. So we use agents to create our statements of work. They're very, they have to have the numbers, have to all add up. They have to have a particular format. They have to have the payment link, the terms of service, the MSA. All that has to be organized. So that is where you could use a set of these structured prompts. You're going to say my skill is going to be my operations lead, and it's now going to output as a Word doc, an Excel doc, a PDF, your SOW, your project setup, your status reports based on something. So what we look at it, and the way that these came together is that every row, I'll pop back up here, the SQL table again. Every row in the table started out as somebody's prompt in the collection that somebody had to write to say, give me a good cold email. And if they had to write that, give me a good cold email, we're probably going to use that again and want to refine that. So help me write this SOW. Well, for us, our SOWs are, 2,000 of them we generated. So we've got a great library for an LLM to go back and go through. So a lot of times it's very easy to say, write as the SOW based off of this, and it's able to help pull those together, and it really helps us save times. But instead of that prompt sitting in the notes, those rows in the database for us are very valuable now, because the skills can now execute on them, and that's one of those great factors of pulling this together. So I'll talk a moment about the compounding effect of this. So this is not something that anybody talks enough about, which is these system compounds. So week 1, 20 prompts, let's say 5 skills is what you put together. They save about 45 minutes. Well, by week 4, you're going to have 5 skills in the system and about 60 prompts. They're fully fleshed out in a memory MD file. So what this is able to do is now able to compound those hours on top of each other. But now you're sitting at 2 hours a week worth of saving. So let's now fast forward to month 3. You've got 30 plus skills across 4 different agents. They're chaining together. Your morning brief across, is generated automatically. It might trigger a call. It might trigger an email or a Slack to somebody if something pops up on there. One of the morning briefs that we worked on with a client looked at their previous day activity. If it was below a certain threshold of activity in it, it automatically triggered that management goes, hey, we're going to have to talk about this on the morning call. So that's something that you can easily put into those prompts and into those agents. So now in month 3, month 4, the agents are getting smarter. The error rate is down. The time savings continues to compound. So you may still be typing, give me a professional looking email into the chat box or into Slack to go into that chat box, but it now is giving you more of the output that you're looking for because it's got a more refined process. So the start on this is really just going to be trying to take 3 manual processes or 3 manual tasks, the prompts that you're doing, and ramp that up and do that over time. Next thing you know that you're doing, these 12 agents are firing off over a 12-month period, 144 virtual agents, worth of month worths of activity going on. That let's say that each one can save you 20 minutes a week on each individual one. Well, that's 48 hours that one's going to save you over the course of the year. So that's very important, and that sets you up also for the next concept I'm going to talk about here in a little bit, which is chaining of the skills. So what is chaining of skills? So one more concept, before we close out here is we're going to take a given skill that is able to do something like creating that statement of work. But when we are done with that statement of work, what has to happen? We need to proof it. So that's the next chain. Okay, so it's going to flow from creating the statement to sending it over for proofing. Now the proofing process is done. That is going to initiate a chain to actually send it over to the electronic signature application, Adobe Sign, DocuSign, PandaDoc, whatever, to send out to the client for them to review. Now the following chain on that is they have now reviewed it, they've agreed to it, they're signing it. Additional chaining that can happen there and workflow is when they sign, make sure that they are visiting the payment link to make their deposit payment in a lot of cases. So that is now automated. Now, when they make that deposit, you could have just an email go over to your accounting department, but wouldn't it also be better if that were a row that wrote into your NetSuite or into your Sage, into your QuickBooks? If those come together and you have now chained all of this together, how much time will that save your organization? That example chain is exactly what we did with a small CPA firm that allowed them to go from 40 clients is what 2 of them were managing. So it was 2 main CPAs managing 40. Some are small, clients for them. Some are big, but they needed to grow. 40 wasn't not nearly enough. We took their onboarding process, their sign-up process, and a lot of their processes and automated it. And what we did find was that the real capacity of that group which was 400. So we helped them grow from 40 to 400. And by chaining these processes together for them, I can't give you exactly what we did for them, but it's very similar to that function. They are now not chasing after the payments. They're now not chasing after somebody who's slightly interested. They are doing a full onboarding. So we have a trigger that kicks off this skill. The SOW gets signed. Everything is flowing through. So that really helped them get that 10x type of growth that a lot of businesses want. We see it in our business too. It is really cut down on the amount of time that it takes us to turn around quotes by having some of these chain processes together. So this is one of those things that I think can have a big impact. And I mean, would you take 10x type of boost in your business without having to add additional people to it and being able to do more with the less? I'm sure. So let's go ahead and talk about what we can do here, and I'm going to give you a 72-hour challenge. So what we're going to do is not just start exploring. Here's a specific assignment that I want everybody to do that should have measurable outcomes. So I'm going to call this the 72-hour Prompt Agent Sprint. Now, in these 72 hours, you may not actually get an agent fully launched, but it's going to put you on the path that you are now at least more organized, that you should have better capability of doing it. 99% of the people downloading OpenClaw never actually get it doing full agentic functionality. 99%. The fastest growing repo in history has a 99% failure rate unless you're a developer. I'm going to put that asterisk out there. So that is where people are going, oh my gosh, I'm going to save all this time, all this money, all this everything, and then fail at it. So I don't want you to be in that failure bucket. I'm going to give you in the 72 challenge, our challenge, a couple quick things here. So if you screenshot of this, if not, you can also email us, and we're going to pop an email address up here on the screen, and email Isaac, and he will mail you a copy of this that will help out. So tonight is kind of late, so I said tonight, but let's not do it tonight. Let's do it tomorrow. But you can start tonight. Let's start exporting all your prompts and start using labels or folders or whatever for an archive, for context, for skills, for task. Let's create the folder structure like this. So we're going to say our AI workspace, and we're going to have a global folder. And because these are going to be the things that are up here at the C-suite, they're affecting everybody. We're going to start putting some of these things in there. And the global is where we're going to put our agent.md file, which is going to be what tells the agent what to do. Tomorrow, we're going to convert our top 5 prompts here to become skills. We're going to load the folders. We're going to set it up to be used with CoWork or Claude, one of these. But we got a couple of homework items here. Test each skill with a real task, not a demo. We're going to now take and try to do one of these skills with Claude, for instance. Because on day 3, we're going to review the output of day 1 and 2, see what worked, update the skill. And remember, we can go back to where I was setting up a skill previous in the video. And now let's also look how we can set up a task. Now, if you're not sure how to set up a task with Claude, ask Claude how to set it up. He can give you a couple examples of how to do this, but this is going to be very important, and I think it's going to lead to a lot of success here without a lot of effort. But I think that this is one of those homework exercises. If you actually start organizing your prompts and pulling them together, you're going to be in a lot more efficient state of mind and everything. But just in quick summary before we do Q&A, remember that notes folder I told you at the top of this webinar that has 300 notes inside of it, and a file called final, use this. I I don't want you to, have the situation where something happens, you lose your work product. So also think about your disaster recovery on this, how you're going to make sure you've got good revision control on everything. So that's something your IT department may have to come in and work with, make sure it's on a OneDrive, but also think about how things are going to evolve and be shared within your same organization. So we're not trying to create a centralized, we're not trying to go from islands of prompts to a centralized prompt graveyard. We're trying to bring these prompts in, not to create that graveyard of prompts, but to create actionable skills that are taking us to the automation, to the agentic, to the self-correcting frameworks that are being built today. So that's really what I'm looking for you guys. A lot of the things that in my business are happening now, even when I'm sleeping. I'm really impressed with how much code generation can happen when fingers are not on the keyboard, how different tasks are able to happen without having to have somebody look. I mean, in our organization in technology, it used to be that we had people that were on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that were watching certain processes. Today, so many of those processes fix themselves. Capacity problems, VMware fixes those, takes care of those. AWS fixes those. So we have DevOps, a lot of the actions today. Now it's time to bring that operational efficiency into the management structure, into the different teams, and bring it into where we can get good value, not just from the low-hanging fruit, but get value that compounds over the next 12 months. So I'm now going to open it up to questions and answers. Hope you guys have some good questions for me tonight. Let's see what we have.